Hello students and welcome to Unit 3. Let's take a look at the workload we have for this unit. The first thing I would like you to do is if you would help us by participating in this program survey. Every few years our department is required to do a review of our program, and we could really use the input of students to help us make our program better. And so there's a link to a survey. I would really appreciate if you would take just the 1 or 2 minutes and complete that survey. If you have concerns about it or would like to know more about how that survey will be used, or any questions at all about the survey, you can contact Matthew from our department, and here's his contact information. For this unit, we're going to read the next chapter in the book, which is Chapter 4. And again, I've included the PowerPoint that goes along with the chapter. If you find those useful, you can go ahead and use that. I've included some object descriptions. In the last chapter we learned about the user tables, data dictionary view, and in the last unit I had posted just a helpful reference sheet of the descriptions or table descriptions for all of the tables in our Justly database and for the user tables data dictionary. I've added in this unit the description or the table description for a new table in the data dictionary called user constraint view, and you'll read about that in the textbook, but here's the results of a describe command on that table are saved in this document. I want to remind you again that any table names or any values actually stored in the data dictionary are case sensitive and stored in all caps. This is important when you use the where clause and you are limiting the results based on trying to match, for example, where a table name equals name. Let's take a look over in SQL Developer what we mean by this. If we do a describe command on books, we'll see the structure of the books table. And notice it didn't matter if books was in lowercase or if books was in uppercase. I should delete the first one before I run the second one. And that is because we're using that on the command to say describe this table. It doesn't matter if it's uppercase or lowercase. Let's describe the user tables view in the data dictionary. That looks like this. And you'll notice that the columns that are stored in the view user tables include things like the table name, table space name, the status, that type of thing. So now let's assume that we want to see a list of tables that we have in our database. I might say select the table name and the status from user tables, and I'm not adding any criteria. So when the results return, we get every table name and status that exists in the database. There's 10 of them. Notice one of the tables that we have in our database is the table called books. I'm going to run the same statement again, but this time I want to limit the results of my query to only show the table name and status for any table with the name books. Look what happens when I run that with books being all lowercase. The query is run successfully, but no rows are returned because the table name, which is books, was stored in all uppercase in the data dictionary. So we get no results. If I run that same query and I put the actual literal value that I'm looking for, the table name books, in all caps like it's stored in the database, then I will get the results that I expected. So you see the table name is stored as a value in all caps. Therefore, when I'm using it on the where clause, trying to match the values, it also has to be in all caps, or otherwise it returns nothing. I'd also like you to notice that if I change these other items on the select clause or the from clause, the actual columns, the column names that I'm choosing, doesn't matter if those are listed in uppercase or lowercase because they're not literal values that are being stored that we're trying to match. So I can run this same statement that I just ran and notice that I've changed the column names to uppercase where here they were lowercase, and I'm going to get the same results. I hope that makes some sense. I know that you probably dealt with that in the last chapter, so that was just a quick review. Some other things I just wanted to point out is that there is a 30 character limit for any constraint names. In this chapter, it's going to be dealing with constraints. What are constraints? What do they do? How do they help us? And then you are actually going to be able to create constraints. When you give a constraint a name, you're limited to 30 characters. If you don't assign a name, the system will auto-generate a name for the constraint, but the constraint that my schema gives the constraint in my database might be different than the automatic name it gives to you in your database. So when we go and do the assignment in this unit, I am expecting everybody to make a point to assign names to the constraints that you create. Do not let the system assign an automatic constraint name. And then again, just pointing out, in SQL Plus, know the difference between the run a statement, which will run an individual statement and stop when it gets to a semicolon, and this next icon over is run script, so it will run everything on the screen or everything in a saved script. Our assignment for Unit 3 will come from the back of Chapter 4. You're going to do all of the hands-on assignments in the back of Chapter 4. And after each problem, I'd like you to include code that would somehow verify that your SQL statement worked properly, which means that you're probably going to have to be using some of the data dictionary views that you've learned about. I've provided some constraint naming conventions that I would like you to follow. In other words, if you're making a primary key constraint, it should end with an underscore PK. And that's explained here, but once again, I do not want you to allow the system to assign the constraint name. And then finally in this unit, you have a quiz over the contents of this unit. There's only 15 questions, 1 point each. I did want to mention that in units 1 and 2, I did discover the responses A, B, C, D that it wanted you to choose from were being given to different students in different orders, in random orders, and therefore it caused some confusion in some of the questions where maybe option D might have been intended to say both A and B, but that might have come up as option B, and so it was causing a lot of wrong answers in quizzes. If you've encountered anything like that in Unit 1 or 2, it should be corrected now, but if you've encountered anything like that in Unit 1 or 2 and would like me to go take a look at your quiz score, go ahead and shoot me an email with the exact quiz, the exact attempt, first, second, or third attempt of the quiz, and then the exact question number that you would like me to review, with an explanation of why you feel that it was wrong. That's our workload for Unit 3. Good luck, and I'll see you next week. Thanks.